Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a truly fascinating textual progression. Today, we're going to look closely at a collection of ancient texts that essentially form the bedrock of Western moral philosophy, and we're tracking one very specific thread through all of them: the concept of false witness. We'll be looking at how these texts view lying not just some simple legal infraction, but as a deeply revealing window into the human condition. As you'll see, it is an incredible journey from a rigid courtroom rule to a deeply psychological mirror.
So, keep this paradox in mind as we trace the evolution of this ancient law. Why is one of humanity's oldest rules literally the one we break the absolute most? It's a genuine puzzle, right? I mean, across cultures, we pretty much universally agree that lying is bad. Yet the historical and textual evidence we're about to look at suggests that deception is practically our default setting. So why is that? Are we just terribly bad at following instructions, or is there something fundamentally complex about the way we relate to the truth?
Section 1. The original rule, establishing the baseline. We have to start our chronological journey at the very beginning to establish the baseline of this whole moral framework. Notice how incredibly simple, external, and seemingly black and white this original 9th commandment is. Found in Exodus 20, verse 16, this is a strictly legalistic, straightforward boundary. It's totally situated in the context of a community and a courtroom. Did you stand up and lie about the person living next to you? It's super binary. You either gave false testimony or you didn't. At this early stage in the text, the rule is really all about maintaining social order and objective justice. But, well, as we're going to see, stating the rule and actually following it are two completely different things.
Section 2. A history of deceit. Humanity's failure. Let's move forward and see how the texts document a really messy reality: humanity's immediate and continuous failure to follow this strict rule. What's absolutely fascinating about this is the visceral, almost violent imagery these ancient authors used to describe the destructive nature of lies. They didn't just document the deception, they used vivid poetry to express the damage. Look at Psalm 5, describing a deceiver's throat as an open grave, the striking image of decay literally swallowing up the innocent. Isaiah 59 personifies lies, saying people conceive trouble and give birth to evil, which frames deceit as this dark, reproductive cycle. And Proverbs warns us that even positive-sounding lies, a flattering mouth, work absolute ruin. The text makes it abundantly clear: words have physical, destructive weight.
And these texts show us this wasn't just, occasional perjury. It was viewed as a deeply ingrained habit. Look at Psalm 58, which says, "People go wayward even from birth, spreading lies right out of the womb." It frames deceit not just as a learned behavior, but as a totally innate human flaw. Furthermore, Ezekiel highlights that this deception didn't stop at the courtroom doors. It completely infected the spiritual realm. People were out there uttering false visions and claiming divine authority for their own lies. The whole system was compromised.
Section 3. Redefining the heart, the internal shift.
Now, the really crucial pivot in the source material occurs when Jesus fundamentally expands on this ancient commandment. This brilliantly illustrates the shift from a purely legal framework to an incredibly intimate examination of moral corruption. On one side, we have the old standard, the external action. But then Matthew 15 argues that false testimony doesn't just happen out of nowhere, it originates from a corrupted internal condition. Jesus completely shifts the focus from the words coming out of the mouth to the state of the heart that's actually generating those words. So you aren't just breaking a rule when you lie, you're revealing a sickness deep inside your own character. But here's where it gets really counterintuitive. The text acknowledges the very real pain of being a victim of false witness, yet surprisingly frames enduring it within an entirely new paradigm of blessing and heavenly reward. If lying is an internal sickness of the deceiver, what about the person being lied about? Matthew 5 completely flips the script on us. Instead of seeking immediate, earthly vengeance against those spreading the false witness, the text suggests that enduring this injustice places you in a historic lineage of persecuted prophets. It offers this radical, otherworldly perspective on suffering and truth. And it pushes the philosophy even further, asserting that merely loving those who love you, well, that just isn't enough. True transformation requires loving the very people who lie about you. The source material argues that basically anyone, even a tax collector or a pagan, in the context of that era, can be kind to their friends. The absolute ultimate stress test of your own internal character is whether you can actually extend love and prayer toward the people actively weaponizing the truth against you. No small feat, right? Now look at how this timeline visually tracks humanity's persistence in breaking this rule across entirely different eras of the texts. Even with that profound internal realization brought about in the Gospel era, the later epistles show early communities still fighting the exact same battles.
You would think that after defining the law and then thoroughly redefining the heart, human behavior would just magically fix itself. But no, the struggle with deception is incredibly stubborn.
Even in the later writings, alongside commands in James and Ephesians to just stop slandering, the deadly metaphors for lying, like snake venom, remain heavily prevalent. The author of Romans reaches right back into that Old Testament imagery to make his point. People are still using their tongues to deceive. They literally still have the venom of asps under their lips. The letters to James and Ephesians are practically begging their audiences, put off falsehood, do not slander one another. The simple fact that these instructions had to be repeated so forcefully tells us exactly how hard it was for people to adhere to the truth.
Section 4. The Open Invitation, the Modern Mirror.
Finally, we're going to bring this ancient philosophical progression crashing straight into the modern day. If we translate false witness for today, it looks exactly like these everyday behaviors. We lie to protect our egos, or we stay silent when someone else is falsely accused. I mean, have you ever embellished a story just to get a little more sympathy? What about office gossip, or mindlessly spreading an unverified rumor online about someone you just happen to dislike? Or using flattery to manipulate a situation for your own personal gain? The ancient texts called it an open grave and snake venom. Today, it's just a regular Tuesday on the internet or at the water cooler. We are still so deeply tangled in the exact same web of deception.
But then, the source material delivers this stark, totally surprising punchline as an open invitation for all of us who inevitably fail the standard. It lists all those modern infractions, the gossip, the ego protection, the flattery, and acknowledges the entire historical timeline we just reviewed. From the initial rule to the constant failure, the internal sickness, and the ongoing struggle. The invitation is based entirely on the reality of our shared, flawed human condition, and the source material simply says this: go to church anyway.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you consider what this ancient text truly reveals about the human condition. We've tracked this concept from a rigid external law etched in stone to a deeply internal diagnostic of the human heart. We've seen how our struggle with the truth completely transcends time, culture, and context. So ask yourself, are these moral frameworks designed solely to judge our failures? Or are they functioning exactly as intended by acting as a mirror, showing us precisely who we are and pointing toward our desperate need for grace? Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with me today.